A Christmas Carol by Charles Dickens. Chapter 1. Marley's Ghost. Marley was dead to begin with. There's no doubt about that. He was dead as a doornail. This must be distinctly understood, or nothing wonderful can come of the story I'm going to relate. Marley and Scrooge were business partners once, but then Marley died, and now their firm belonged to Scrooge, who was a stingy and heartless man. Oh, but he was a tight-fisted, hand at the grindstone Scrooge. A squeezing, wrenching, grasping, scraping, clutching, covetous old sinner. He was secret and self-contained, and solitary as an oyster. The cold within him froze his old features, nipped his pointed nose, shriveled his cheek, stiffened his gait, made his eyes red, his thin lips blue, and spoke out shrewdly in his grating voice. A frosty rime was on his head, and on his eyebrows, and his wiry chin. He carried his own low temperatures always about with him. He iced his officers in the dog days, and didn't thaw it 1 degree at Christmas. Once upon a time, of all the good days in the year, on Christmas Eve, old Scrooge sat busy in his counting house. It was cold, bleak, biting weather, and in Scrooge's office it was not much warmer either. Suddenly, a cheerful person entered the office. It was Scrooge's nephew. "A Merry Christmas, Uncle. God save you," Fred said. "Bah!" said Scrooge. "Humbug!" "Christmas a humbug, Uncle?" said Scrooge's nephew. "You don't mean that, I am sure." "I do. What reason have you to be merry? You're poor enough." "Come then," returned the nephew. "What right have you to be dismal? You're rich enough." "If I could work my will," said Scrooge indignantly, "every idiot who goes about with 'Merry Christmas' on his lips should be boiled with his own pudding and buried with a stake of holly through his heart. He should." "Uncle," pleaded the nephew. "Nephew," returned the uncle sternly, "keep Christmas in your own way, and let me keep it in mine." "Keep it? But you don't keep it," said Fred, who was a very friendly young man. He even tried to cheer Scrooge up, and invited him for dinner on Christmas Day with his wife and friends. But Scrooge said no, and sent him out. When Scrooge's nephew left, 2 gentlemen came in to collect money for the poor, who had no place they could go. "Do I have the honour of addressing Mr. Ebenezer Scrooge?" "You do?" "Well, we are here on behalf of the poor, and at this time of year it is considered appropriate to make a donation to their welfare so that they may celebrate this glorious holiday." "What?" "Many thousands are in want of common necessaries. Hundreds of thousands are in want of common comforts, sir." Stingy Scrooge, however, didn't give the gentleman any money. "Are there no prisons? Are there no workhouses?" he said sarcastically. "I don't make merry myself at Christmas, and I can't afford to make idle people merry." When it was time to close the office, Scrooge talked to his employee, the clerk, Bob Cratchit. "You'll want all day off tomorrow, I suppose?" said Scrooge. "If that is okay, sir," answered the clerk. "It's not okay," said Scrooge, "and it is not fair. After all, I have to pay you for the whole day, although you don't work. A
poor excuse for picking a man's pocket every 25th of December. But if it must be, I want you to start work even earlier the following morning."
Cratchit promised that he would, and Scrooge walked out with a growl. Scrooge lived all alone in an old house that had once belonged to his deceased business partner, Marley. The yard was very dark and scary that night, and when Scrooge wanted to unlock the door, he had the feeling that he saw Marley's face in the knocker. It was not angry or ferocious, but looked at Scrooge as Marley used to look, with ghostly spectacles turned up upon its ghostly forehead. As Scrooge looked closer at this phenomena, it was a knocker again. To say that he was not startled would be untrue, but Scrooge was not frightened easily.
"Humbug,"
he said. He opened the door and walked in. He locked himself in, however, which he usually didn't do. But then he felt safe again and sat down before the fire. Suddenly, Scrooge heard a clanking noise deep down below, as if somebody was dragging a heavy chain through the cellar. The noise came nearer and nearer, and then Scrooge saw a ghost coming right through the heavy door. It was Marley's ghost, the same face, the same, and his chains were long. They were made of cash boxes, keys, and heavy purses.
"Who are you?"
said Scrooge. "In life, I was your partner, Jacob Marley. Do you believe in me?" asked Marley the ghost.
"I don't,"
said Scrooge. "Why do you doubt your senses?"
"Because," said Scrooge, "every little thing affects them. A slight stomach ache could make my imagination run wild. You may be an undigested bit of beef, a blot of mustard, a crumb of cheese, a fragment of an underdone potato. There's more gravy than of the grave about you, whatever you are."
Scrooge was not much in the habit of cracking jokes, but he was trying to distract himself and keep down his terror, for the spectre's voice disturbed the very marrow in his bones. The spirit raised a frightful cry and shook its chain with such a dismal and appalling noise that Scrooge held on tight to his chair to save himself from fainting. He clasped his hands before his face.
"Mercy," he said. "Dreadful ghost, why do you trouble me?"
"I must wander through the world unhappily because I was so awful in life. I wear these chains because I made them myself, link by link, when I never walked beyond our counting house. I only cared about business, but not the people around me."
"But you were always a good man of business, Jacob,"
faltered Scrooge, who now began to apply this to himself. "Business!" cried the ghost, wringing its hand again. "Mankind was my business. Charity, mercy, kindness, and friendship were all my business. Yet I ignored them all to count money and deal with other business." Marley held up his chain at arm's length, as if that were the cause of all his grief, and flung it heavily upon the ground again. "I'm here tonight to warn you," Marley said, "that you have yet a chance and hope of escaping my fate."
"You were always a good friend to me," said Scrooge. "Thank you."
"You will be haunted by 3 spirits." Scrooge's face fell almost as low as the ghost's had done.
I think I'd rather not."
"Without their visits," said the ghost, "you cannot hope to escape the path I tread. Expect the first one tomorrow, when the bell tolls 1. When he had said these words, Marley's ghost disappeared through the window. When Scrooge looked out curiously, he saw the air was filled with restless phantoms, moaning as they went. Every one of them wore chains, like Marley's ghost. The misery of them all was clear. Scrooge closed the window and examined the door by which the ghost had entered. It was double locked. He had locked it with his own hands, and the bolts were undisturbed. He tried to say humbug, but stopped at the first syllable. He was so tired from the strange evening that he went straight to bed and fell asleep in an instant.